Okay, year six. So you've looked at how we see colours last week. Now we're looking at how shadows formed. So when an opaque, remember we looked at that opaque and it meant no light could go through. We had translucent, transparent and opaque. Transparent, all the light can go through. Translucent, some of the light can go through. And opaque, none of the light can go through. So it blocks that ray of light and that forms a shadow. But is it always the same shape as the object that casts it? It's not. It can change size depending on the distance of the object away from the light source. So maybe you could go into your room, get a torch, turn all the lights off and experiment with putting the object closer and further away from your light source from your torch and see the effects that it does. When it's nearer, what happens to the shadow? When it's further away, what happens to the shadow? Okay. So, do we always have shadows? And if we don't, why don't we? What are the best and worst conditions for shadow? So you're going to try and make a shadow in a dark environment and a light environment and see which one works best. You'll need a torch to do this. You can also use the torches on your phones as well, year six. So this will be in your week 5 resources sheet, okay, about how to make a shadow puppet show. So you're going to give your audience information on how to make a shadow. You could even film this and put it on your Teams as well for me to have a look at. So you're going to write a script for your characters, make sure that you're meeting your own learning objective, which is looking at how shadows form, okay. And once you've written the script, you're going to make your puppets and then perform the show to either members of your house or class. Now you could do objects as well. If you didn't want to make the puppets, you could use objects you already had in your house. I don't know, like teddies or toys or anything like that. You can use some sticks as well. If you don't have the resources to do this, please don't panic, year six. You have an extra task to do, so this won't be all of your task. You could experiment with different sized objects and show me that experiment as to how close and how far away and what happens to the shadows and about the conditions as well. So, Greens, you're going to write a script and you're going to give information in that script about how objects block light to form shadows, okay? It can be a really serious information puppet show or it can be a bit of a silly one, but it must have that information in. Blues, you're going to write a script and give information that shows about matching the objects, why they do match the objects that cast them. So again, you can make it silly or serious. If you can't write a script, you could write a detailed scientific explanation. You could maybe take a photo of a shadow at different stages and label it like we've been doing. Remember, writing scientifically, labeled diagrams, scientific vocabulary. I'm looking for absorbs, opaque, those kinds of things. And then reds, again, if you can't write a script for this puppet show, you could just write a detailed explanation, all right, about how conditions affect the shadow. You could even do a table of results. What objects, what are the best conditions, how did you work that out? You could make a prediction. You could create a full science experiment. So you create a prediction. I think that dark rooms, and when it is nearer the torch, because then you could experiment with a dark room and a light room and 3 of the same objects, and you could see whether that would make a difference. And then you could write up that experiment. So you could write up your method. How did you measure the distance? Did you use a ruler? You could then measure up your results. You could even draw a table of results as well. So even if you can't write that script for that puppet show, you could plan your own science experiment for that. Okay. Can you affect the length of the shadow? So the red group, you could be answering this from that distance. Does the size of the shadow change by changing the distance of the object and the torch? Do you fix the torch in one place and then move the object? What about the angle that the torch is at? Does that make a difference? There's so many different experiments you could do with this at home and just with a torch and an object. You could measure the distance and keep the torch fixed. You could put the torch at different angles and look at how the different shadows are formed. It is up to you, year 6. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you investigate this topic. So again, another challenge, investigating this. So anyone can do this, but Reds, this would be really, really useful for your task in general if you can't write this puppet show script. Okay. So once you've completed your investigation, it's really important that you write a conclusion. Refer back to your predictions. Could you use a diagram? If you can't draw your own diagram, we've done one here for you, and you could just label it and maybe try and copy it. Okay, well done, year 6.